When steam finished on Britain's mainline railways in August 1968, many thought, oh well, that's it then. Hung up their cameras, stashed their notebooks, and consoled themselves with endless sterile ramblings about an alleged strategic reserve hidden in the mountains of North Wales. What they failed to notice was that throughout Britain, countless steam locos were still plying their trade at industrial sites, some with really quite decent lengths of track to run on. As on the State Railway, the industrial steam locos were gradually replaced by diesels in the 1970s, or the industry they served declined and closed. Some did survive, and rather amazingly, a handful carried on working into the early 1980s. The four-part Industry of Steam series will take you back to the forgotten decade of the 1970s and to the vast number of sites around Britain where steam still reigned. The range of industries is diverse, as are the locomotives themselves. This shot brings together all the aspects that made the industrial scene so appealing. Andrew Barclay Loco, number 1296 of 1912 vintage, hauls a heavy train of coal from Bedley Colliery to the BR Exchange sidings along a scenic branch line. And all this only 8 miles from the centre of Glasgow. And this map will show where industrial steam was most plentiful in the 1970s. Basically the coalfields of Fife, Lothian and Ayrshire, an area bounded by Stirling to the north, Ayr to the south, and with Edinburgh and Glasgow staking out east and west. We predominantly feature the collieries, shown in black for obvious reasons, but there's also a couple of non-coal sites, the Whifflet Foundry of R.B. Tennant and the British Aluminium Company's works at Burnt Island. We begin on the east coast, on the Firth of Forth, just north of the town of Dysart, and the former Francis Colliery. The colliery was reached via a south-facing junction from the former Edinburgh and Northern Railway, later to become known as the East Coast Main Line. Exchange sidings stood next to the main line, although these weren't always used. Sometimes the arriving British Railways loco would run all the way down the short branch to pick up its wagons. The scene as it was in 1971. Andrew Barclay's saddle tank number 1142 from 1908 running as number 29. The only loco working on this occasion, but there were 3 others on site, 1 in store, 1 under repair and a 3rd being dismantled. Number 29 hauls empty wagons from a yard to the north of the colliery towards the loading stage. Francis, originally sunk in 1873, quickly became an important link in the chain of large pits that formed the Fife coalfield. Known locally as the Dubby from the nearby geographical features, operating the line became known as the Dubby Shunt. Francis became part of the Fife Coal Company's operations in July 1923 and subsequently passed into National Coal Board hands when coal production was nationalised on the 1st of January 1947. Having positioned its wagons, number 29 prepares to recouple and take its train down to the exchange sidings. Following the Michael Colliery disaster in 1967, Francis Colliery took over the mining of the Michael reserves. So some of the other pit's employees kept their jobs by transferring to Francis and extracting the same coal from a different direction. visit 4 years later, in 1975, finds number 30 in operation. Andrew Barclay, number 2259 from 1949, had transferred to Francis after it became redundant at Manor Powys. Another mine will be seen later. Most of the coal hauled out of Francis ended up at Kincardine Power Station. Number 29 was still active, but acting as a spare. Railways Class 20 shatters the illusion of timelessness as it works into the colliery. Number 30 is about to marshal the wagons for the Diesel's return trip. Sharing the yard with number 30 in 1976 is Barclay 2292 from 1951, alias number 21, which had recently been refurbished at Cardowan near Cowdenmeath and transferred from Kinneil. All the locos were this colour under the grime. In 1980, although by then devoid of steam, Francis linked up with Kirkcaldy's Seafield Colliery, but the beginning of the end came in 1984 during the miners' strike, when the only working coalface was sealed off because of spontaneous combustion. Francis finally closed in July 1987. Let us move south to the British Aluminium Company's plant at Burnt Island. The site was located on the west side of the town and reached by a short spur from the East Coast Main Line from Edinburgh to Aberdeen. The docks on the east side of the town also once played a part in the BAC story. Our visit in 1971 finds number 1 in steam, a Peckett 040 saddle tank, number 1376 from 1915. The plant opened in 1913 and produced alumina from imported bauxite. The very clean Peckett was one of 2 such locos used at the plant. A Barclay saddle tank made up the full complement, and all were maintained in tip-top condition. Much easier to do when there isn't a load of coal dust flying about. As with many industrial sites, it was commonplace for engine crews to run their locos for the benefit of enthusiasts when there was no real work to be done. So it's no surprise the little Peckett was snapped up by an enthusiast when it retired and can now be found on the Caledonian Railway at Brechin, cosmetically restored as Percy, of Thomas the Tank Engine fame. The bauxite imported from West Africa used to be moved by rail from the docks, but in later years the transfer switched to road lorry because of rising costs. The finished alumina was transferred by rail to smelters at Fort William and Kinroch Leven, where it was cast into aluminium ingots and then sent to the rolling mills in Falkirk. With playtime over, it's time for the real work to begin. With a shunter hanging onto the side, the loco sets off to prepare an outgoing load. Another Class 20, or English Electric Type 1 if you prefer, arrives with a brake van in tow. Sometimes this term will be worked by a Clayton Class 17. The Peckett reverses the wagons and parks them in the departure siding before their journey out to the west coast. BAC eventually merged with Alcan and a new plant opened in 1984. It closed in 2002 and this site is now a housing development. We head west now to the town of Oakley and the nearby colliery of Comrie. This was once the Stirling to Dunfermline Railway. The section of line between Oakley and Alloa closed first, followed soon after the closure of Comrie itself by the remaining section to Dunfermline. Like Francis Colliery we saw earlier, exchange sidings stood next to the main line by the access junction. During 1975, Hunsett Austerity number 3818, built in 1954 and posing as number 19, shunts empties at the pit head. Comrie was opened by the Fife Coal Company in 1935 and in August 1969 recorded its highest output in a single week, 3,260 tonnes. Almost all of its coal was shipped to Longannet Power Station. At the other end of the 1.5 mile branch line is the Oakley Exchange sidings. During 1971, the sole surviving Scottish-based Bagnall Austerity, number 2777 of 1945, prepares to return to the colliery with empties. This was one of 3 locos based here at the time. The others, number 19, which you've just seen, and number 5, were both Hunslet Austerities. This loco, running as number 7, has been fitted with a Geisel ejector, a none too pretty improvement applied to a number of industrial locos during the 1960s and early 1970s. Number 7 soon after departure from Oakley. The unusual Geisel ejector chimney was fitted to some older locos to help them run more economically and with greater power. The modification was invented in the late 1940s by an Austrian, one Herr Geisel, and although only trialled in a half-hearted fashion by British Rail, the design was used to great effect on the continent. Having a signal box and a level crossing on an industrial line was quite unusual, but there was one here at Oakley. You'll catch a glimpse of it in a moment. In 1976, number 7 has steam to spare as it heads downhill along the branch with its loaded train. Steam continued in use at the colliery until the end of rail movements in 1981. The colliery survived until 1986, when it finally closed with the loss of 480 jobs. The loco has to work a lot harder to return the empties to Comrie. Local flora in full bloom. The Comrie locos found favour too when they retired. All 3 were privately preserved and can now be found at the Bowness and Kinneil Railway. We head northwest now, a few miles, to the small town of Dollar and the mine of the same name. Dollar was situated on the former Devon Valley Railway on the Alloa to Kinross route. A short spur ran eastbound into the colliery, which was established by the Alloa Coal Company in the 1920s. In 1971, number 6, a Barclay 040 saddle tank, number 2043 from 1937, was in charge of the small amount of shunting required at the site. British Rail locos ran right into the colliery to pick up wagons, which were then taken to Kincardine Power Station, opened in 1959. Passenger services along the main line between Alloa and Kinross finished in 1964, but the section from Dollar to Alloa remained open for coal traffic until 1973 when the pit closed. Number 6 found further use at a new home, Kinneil Colliery. We head southwest now towards Stirling and the Manor Powys Colliery, situated near Causeway Head to the south of the former Stirling and Dunfermline Railway between Stirling and Camas. We saw number 30 earlier at Francis. This was the loco's former home in 1971. The first shaft was sunk at Manor Powys in 1910, and coal finally struck a year later. Despite huge investment in trying to reach high-quality anthracite, the digging of a cheap drift mine to reach a layer of low-grade coal was much more successful, with large tonnages needing to be moved. The drift mine at Dollar produced similar coal, in what, at the time, were record tonnages. As with Dollar, the coal produced at Manor Powys was sent to Kincardine Power Station. A Class 37, a D6846, arrives with a train of empties. The main pits closed in 1967, but the drift mine survived until 1972, when the colliery complex finally shut. As we saw earlier, number 30 moved on to Francis Colliery, and later into preservation at Lockall Meadows Country Park. We move now to the outskirts of Glasgow and Bedley Colliery, situated on a short branch to the north of the former Monkland and Kirkintilloch railway line, between Kirkintilloch and Garn Queen South Junction. The line to the west of Bedley was closed in 1967 to remove another obstacle to the new M73 motorway. Bedley used 3 locos, including this one, number 9, Hudswell Clark, number 895 from 1909. Judging by its appearance, the loco has recently been to the workshops. This was another Bedley loco in 1973. Number 8 is Barclay number 1296 from 1912, here recently overhauled and fitted with a Geisel ejector. The half-mile from colliery to exchange sidings ran through pleasant countryside and, not surprisingly, attracted much attention from enthusiasts. Some, our cameraman included, used to camp beside the line overnight to savour the pleasure of being awoken by the sound of steam working hard. On most weekdays there were 3 return trips along the line. Operations usually finished by 2 p.m. each afternoon. The return run with the empties was much easier. All the loco had to do was drift back down the gradient to the pit head. The second load of the day heads away from the colliery. Bedley Colliery was opened in 1905 by William Baird and Company. It was established to produce high-quality coking coal for the Gart Sherry Iron Works, and in later years, the steelworks at Ravenscraig. By 1969, almost 1,000 men were employed at Bedley, producing some 250,000 tonnes annually. The third and final trip departs. We catch up as it nears the exchange sidings, where a British Rail Class 20 will take the wagons forward. Our next visit in 1976 sees a new attraction on the line. Andrew Barclay's saddle tank, number 2296 of 1950, made redundant by diesel traction at Cardow Colliery around 1973. The opportunity was taken to replace Bedley's number 16, Hudswell Clark number 1331 of 1918, with this newer model. Manufactured in Kilmarnock, Andrew Barclay's locomotives once dominated the industrial scene in Scotland. The company was founded in 1840 by Andrew Barclay and Thomas McCulloch as an engineering concern, and built its first steam locomotive in 1859, an 040 saddle tank. In 1888, the company merged with Barclays and Company, a separate business run by family members, and became Andrew Barclay, Sons and Company Limited. The last steam loco was built in 1962, an 062 tank for a customer in Indonesia. Barclays was also an early contender in the diesel locomotive market, building its first in 1916, although not with any regularity before 1935. Barclay was the leading British manufacturer of fireless locomotives, producing more of the type than any other British maker. During 1972, the Hunslet Engine Company acquired the equity in Barclays, and the company became Hunslet Barclay, the name by which it is still known today. It retains the distinction of being the world's oldest surviving locomotive manufacturer. With the demise of number 16 at Bedley Colliery, number 9 became the last operational Hudswell Clark loco in Scotland. Here it is, nearing the exchange sidings. With no empties to return, the loco runs light back to the colliery. This one also survived into preservation and is currently at the Summerlee Heritage Park in Coatbridge. Bedley remained steam operated right up to its closure on the 11th of December 1981. Number 17 had the honour of hauling the last train and can now be found preserved at the Scottish Vintage Bus Museum in Leth Ormond. We head now for West Lothian and the banks of the River Forth and Kinneil Colliery. Located on the former Slamanan and Borrisdouness Railway to the east of Borrisdouness, better known for obvious reasons as Bowness, the colliery opened in June 1951 on the site of the Furnace Yard mine, which had operated for 4 years between 1926 and 1930. These 1976 views feature Barclay number 6, a loco we saw earlier at Dollar. Like many of the Scottish industrials, this was another train assembly operation before the BR loco arrived to take the coal away. In 1964, Kinneil linked up with Low Valleyfield across the river via a 1¼ mile tunnel, which had taken 27 men 18 months to complete. The coal mine here was brought to the surface at Kinneil. The annual output was 240,000 tonnes. It was estimated that 50 million tonnes of coal reserves, at depths down to 3,000 feet, were under the Forth Basin. enough to provide local employment for 100 years, it was proclaimed at the time. Number 6 runs through the colliery exchange sidings, following the arrival of another rake of empties. Far from the 100 years envisaged at the time of the 1964 expansion, Kinneil survived for barely 20. Geographical faults, costing an estimated £12 million to overcome, required tunnels to link Kinneil with Longannet under the Firth of Forth, the death knell for the colliery. In June 1978, the last train worked out, and the mine officially closed in 1983. Loco number 6 is now preserved at the Preston Grange Museum in Preston Pans. And while we're on the preserved theme, the nearby Bowness and Kinneil Railway follows a similar route to the old Slamanan and Borristoness Railway, but apart from a section at Bowness itself, on a completely new alignment. We move south now, but stay in West Lothian for a visit to Polkemmet. The colliery here was reached via a branch from the former Wilson Town, Morningside and Coltness Railway. Exchange sidings were located on Polkemmet Moor, a 3/4 of a mile climb from the colliery itself. The first noticeable thing about Polkemmet was the rundown looking bunch of hybrids it called a loco fleet. 4 were based here for the colliery duties. This is number 9 in 1971. Andrew Barclay 1007 from 1904. The loco is carrying a boiler and saddle tank from a much more modern loco. All trains from the colliery to the exchange sidings were double-headed. Number 9 is about to couple up to number 12, an 060 Barclay saddle tank, number 1829 from 1924. Number 12 is another hybrid. It actually carries the boiler, saddle tank and chimney from Grant Ritchie 042, number 539. W.M. Dixon and Co. began sinking a number 1 shaft at Polkemmet in 1913 and a number 2 3 years later. Work was stopped in 1917 until the end of the First World War the following year. The shafts reached the coal in 1921 and production started in 1922. Following nationalisation, soon after the Second World War, the rate of development speeded up and additional manpower was recruited until by 1952 output had increased to almost 2,000 tonnes daily. This increase in output during the first 5 years of nationalisation was achieved without carrying out any major reconstruction. Another reorganisation in 1958 increased capacity to 4,000 tonnes per day. Approximately 95% of Polkemmet's coal was sold to the British Steelworks at Ravenscraig, the remainder for domestic use. Numbers 9 and 12 make a stirring sight as they pass the loco shed and head for Polkemmet Moor. 1975. On the left, number 25, on the right, number 8. Number 25 is Barclay 2358 from 1954 and had transferred to Polkemmet from Niddry around 1974. Number 8 is a classic piece of Barclay Victorian design. Works number 885, built in 1900, making it the oldest surviving working loco in Scotland. The pair are preparing to take another batch of coal to the exchange sidings. Up to 12 trains could run each day, with the last setting off at around 2 p.m. A year later, and another departing train is dwarfed by the colliery. On this occasion, number 25 is leading number 17, a Hunslet Austerity, number 2880, built in 1943 as part of an order of 300 for the Ministry of Supply. The loco had originally worked at Long Marston's Central Ordnance Depot and Longtown's Central Ammunition Depot before joining the National Coal Board fleet. It was one of only 5 austerities running in Scotland by the early 1970s and was also the oldest of them. At the exchange sidings, the locos had to run round separately. Incidentally, these and other industrial locos running to exchange sidings carried small plates stating that they were passed to run over BR metals. With nearly 1,400 people working at the pit at this time, Polkemmet was the second largest employer in West Lothian after the British Leyland Truck Factory at Bathgate. The pit had lacked decent investment, but some £326,000 was invested in 1979 and 80, a figure which rose to just under £1 million 2 years later, much of it on the construction of underground roadways. Our final visit to Polkemmet takes place in 1978, 2 years or so before steam finished here. And number 25 is joined by Barclay 1296, which we saw working at Bedley in 1973. During the miners' strike in 1984 and 85, the pumping engines in the mines had been turned off and the shafts became flooded. Although the pumps were restarted when the dispute was settled, sadly the pit closed in 1986. Loco number 8 survived to be put on a plinth at the Polkemmet Country Park, whereas these two were preserved by the Ayrshire Railway Preservation Group at Dunaskin. Let's take a break from coal and move west towards Coatbridge and the RB Tennant's Foundry at Whifflet. The works was located to the northeast of the former Monkland and Kirkintilloch Railway, which later became the through route from Moss End to both the West and East Highlands. Having opened at the turn of the 20th century, this location was best known to enthusiasts for its use of 4 Sentinel steam locos. They were brought in to transfer loads between the Whifflet Foundry and the Meadow Works, opened in 1961. Sentinel Robin in 1973. Built in 1957, it carried the works number 9268. Even at weekends in the 1970s, there were usually 2 locos in operation, moving molten and finished steel around the site. Only 7 minutes was allowed to move the molten steel before it cooled and became unusable. These diminutive locos featured the Sentinel high-pressure water tube vertical boilers, with a gearbox passing drive to the wheels by roller chains. The Sentinel Company originated in Glasgow making valves. In 1903 it acquired the business of Simpson and Bibby of Horsey, Shropshire, who'd been working on the production of steam road vehicles. Their work was transferred to Polmadie, and in 1905 the first Sentinel steam wagon appeared. The range of road vehicles rapidly expanded, and in 1915 wagon production moved to a new plant in Shrewsbury. The company turned its attention to railways in 1923 with the building of the first in a long line of shunting locos and rail cars. In 1956, Sentinel was taken over by Rolls-Royce Limited, who continued to build diesel engines and diesel-powered locos at the plant from 1959 until 1971. Another of the Sentinels, Ranald, number 9627, preceded Robin off the production line. Here it's passing 9561, named John, of 1953 vintage. The 4th Sentinel, number 9631, was named Dennis, and all bore the names of the company's directors. Tennants also owned a steam crane for heavy lifting work around the site. The company employed around 300 people and specialised in cast steel rolls, electro-slag remelting and conventional steel ingots. The Sentinels carried on until 1984 before they were taken out of use, achieving the status of last working steam locos in Scotland. Tennants stopped production here at Whifflet at the end of November 1995. Moving on to 1978, and Ranald has obviously received a recent overhaul. On this occasion, the loco is sharing duties with Robin. Ranald and Dennis are preserved at Bowness. Robin can be found at the Somerley Heritage Centre. The whereabouts of John, which for a while was placed on a plinth at Dick Engineering in Coatbridge, is in doubt. He is nowhere to be seen. Let's return to the coal and head towards Ayrshire and Mortlin. The colliery was reached by a short branch off the Glasgow, Paisley, Kilmarnock and Ayr Railway. Our visit takes place in 1971. Barclay number 1116, built in 1910, was in use, running as number 16. A second Barclay, number 1442, was based here as a standby engine. The Mortlin Dykefield Colliery was opened in 1938 by Bears and Dull Nellington and closed on the 26th of August 1966 when a coal preparation plant was set up instead. Number 16 takes part in a spot of fly shunting. Upon closure, the loco moved to Barony Colliery as a standby. It's now cosmetically preserved at Dunniskin by the Ayrshire Railway Preservation Group. Moving east to Cronbury, we encounter Cairnhill Colliery. Situated on a branch from the Glasgow and South Western Muirkirk line, the colliery opened in 1815. Our first visit is in 1973. Number 1, Andrew Barclay 2368, built in 1955, was in sole charge of duties at that time. The colliery was up on the moors, and a connecting line ran downhill for a mile to the exchange sidings. Movement of coal by rail ceased momentarily in the early 1970s, but resumed in the autumn of 1972 when an agreement was reached to sell coal to Northern Ireland. In preparation, Number 1 underwent a steam test in July of that year inside its own private shed at the colliery. The Irish traffic was still running in 1976. Here we see Number 1 at the exchange sidings, heading back on the much tougher uphill run to the colliery. Cairnhill was another of the 19 collieries operated by Bairds and Dull Nellington. 3 or 4 trips a day were normally worked along the branch during the week. Rail traffic finished at Cairnhill in the autumn of 1976, a few months after these shots were taken. Number 1 is another loco saved by the Ayrshire Railway Preservation Group. In early 2007, it was inside at Minivay, awaiting transfer to Dunniskin. Our final destination in Scotland is the Waterside system, located to the southeast of Ayr. By the start of the 1970s, the system wasn't as extensive as it once had been, but still linked to collieries, Minivay and Pennyvenny, to the coal preparation sites at Dunniskin, from where onward shipment was undertaken by British Rail. This really was the must-visit location in Scotland. 5 locos were based there in 1971, all of which ran with low-sided wooden wagons acting as tenders. Number 19, Barclay number 1614, built in 1918, shunts wagons at Dunniskin. A large coal washer was located here to process the coal coming in from the collieries. There was also a 4-road loco shed. Number 19 is being used to fly shunt a rake of spoil tippers, while still coupled to a rig of empties. Two more Barclays, numbers 24 and 17, push a train of coal towards the washery. Number 24, works number 2335, built in 1953, subsequently had a geyser ejector fitted. Number 17 was some 40 years older, emerging as works number 1338. The line from Dunniskin climbed all the way to Pennyvenny. Number 21, Barclay number 2284 from 1949, battles through the rain en route to Minive Colliery. The lengthy trains these locos could handle on the line's sharp gradients were a tribute to the hard-working staff at Dunniskin Shed, who kept their charges in excellent condition both mechanically and cosmetically. We catch up with 21 doing a spot of shunting at Minive. Moving into 1973, number 19 heads for Minive. Normally, 3 locos could be found in action each day, with most of the work being done in the morning. At the same location, number 24 approaches with a load of coal from Pennyvenny. The train slows owing to the condition of the track work. 24 is closely followed by number 19, returning from Minivet with a full load. Running underneath the cattle bridge is number 19 again, hauling empties to Pennyvenny. In addition to the coal trains, a number of trips will work to a dedicated slag tip. Number 19 arrives from Pennyvenny with one of these trains. While from the other direction, number 24, with a train of empties for Pennyvenny, has been caught up by number 10 on a slag trip, while waiting for number 19 to clear the line. No wonder the waterside system was so popular. '24 heads away as number 19 propels its tippler wagons up to the slag tip. Number 10 also moves forward. This loco was another Barclay, built in 1947 as number 2244. It makes sure there's enough clearance for number 19 and its train before stopping. Having unloaded, number 19 heads back down from the tip and then reverses to allow number 10 access. Number 10 charges up to the tip. Once clear of the main line, number 19 is free to head back to Pennyvenny. During the final year of operation, number 17 heads past the tip for Dunnaskin with coal from Pennyvenny. Minive had already ceased coal production by this time, having closed in 1976. Pennyvenny, another of Baird and Darnellington's collieries, was the last deep mine in the area and closed in 1978. The railway closed at the same time. The Duniskin to Minive line was lifted in 1980, although interestingly the section between Minive and Pennyvenny was left in situ. Duniskin continued to take open cast coal from the area until 1986. In 1988, Chalmerston, close to Minive, was open for open cast working and the line relayed. The waterside story was far from over though. As we watch these memories from 1976, here's what happened since closure. The Ayrshire Railway Preservation Group had been founded in 1974 with the aim of preserving some of Scotland's industrial railway heritage, especially that of Ayrshire and South West Scotland. Upon closure of the waterside system, the ARPG was determined to save at least part of it. They took over the lease of the derelict site at Minive in 1980, by which time little of the original infrastructure remained. The group laid track, built a small engine shed and converted the few remaining buildings to workshops, a museum and a souvenir shop. Exhibits were also obtained from various sources. An extensive 2-foot 6-inch gauge demonstration line was built. The site was reconnected to the main line at Chalmerston and a platform with its own loop built. Brake van rides were given on summer Sundays, using a small section of the Pennyvenny line. A further platform was built at Duniskin, with the intention of running trains between the two sites, using the Scottish Coal Line. Unfortunately, this never came to pass. Problems with the lease, including a failed attempt to buy the site, meant that in 2002 the group had to decide where to build its future. At a special general meeting of the membership, it was agreed that Minive should be closed and the Scottish Industrial Railway Centre relocated to Duniskin, where the group already had a lease on the 4-road loco shed and other railway infrastructure. A new running line was constructed into the existing platform, and steam-hauled brake van rides began at Duniskin in July 2005. Most of the group's belongings have now been moved there too, although some heavier items are still in store at Minive. Of the locos seen in the final section, all are preserved. 10 and 19 are at Duniskin, 17 at the Tanfield Railway, 21 at the Scottish Mining Museum in Newton Grange, and number 24 at Bowness. Number 17 on a spoil train brings to a close our look back at Scotland's forgotten decade. The next episode in the Industry of Steam series will cover the same period all over again, but in Wales. If you thought industrial steam was dirty, check this out. More than 75 locos from 56 different classes working flat out on the main line and on the private railways. Chinese Takeout is our acclaimed review of industrial steam in the northeast of China in the 21st century. Our second Chinese program concentrates on the fascinating Jitong line and the final years of operation of the awesome 210-2 QJ steam locos. For lots more details on our ever-expanding range of railway programmes, you can contact us in 3 ways. By phone, by mail, and by email. Or check out our website for all the latest news.